Welcome to Sensibly Cynical. My name is Sean, and today I have a fantastic episode lined up. We will be talking about the iconic action-adventure series, Grand Theft Auto. This series was created in 1997 with the game being available on PlayStation 1 and DOS. And, this game is iconic. I was born in the late 80s, so I grew up in the 90s. And in the late 90s, this game was everything, especially in 99 as we hit 2000. Grand Theft Auto 3, which was available on PlayStation 2. And that was the first real cool game, like, in my opinion. That was the game to play in 2001. So this show is going to be awesome. We have a special guest from the EXPCast, and enjoy. And joining me now, one of the co-hosts of the EXPcast, Stoy. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, man. Thanks for reaching out to me and wanting me to come on and talk about video games. Like, how awesome is that?
Yeah, well, like I was telling you off air, I was like, this is the one aspect of the show that we haven't covered. We've been around for like 2+ years and we've yet to cover video games, mostly because my co-host didn't really like them. But that being said, we don't have to go down that path. But that being said, I'm a millennial. I was born in 87, and I remember, 97 when the original Grand Theft Auto, that's what we're going to be talking about today, the GTA series. So I remember when that game came out, it hit $1 million in sales. I mean, it's one of the most iconic PlayStation games of all time.
Yeah, and so, it still is.
This day. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the list here, and I know there's Grand Theft Auto 5, right?
That's the current one right now.
Yeah, and I heard rumors about, we can talk about it later, but I heard rumors about a 6th. So what's your background on that? Like, did you start playing it like I did back in the early 2000s, or?
My first one that I fully completed through was Grand Theft Auto 3, and that was when it hit the ground running. Like, it was the most epic game I think of all at that time, because it was an open world, it was open city, the violence was just kind of over the top.
Right.
And, the power of the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox at the time, made it look, I mean, when we look at the graphics now, it's not realistic, but at the time, when the graphics were about as best as it could get, like, it just made the realism so epic, like, you could run around the city and do whatever it was you wanted to do. You weren't following a script. You were kind of following a script, with story quests and campaigns, but you could really just run around the city and do whatever you wanted. That was the big appeal at the time for a lot of those players jumping in.
Yeah, remind me of the locations. Was it still Liberty City? Was it Vice City or San Andreas, or was it all three of them that you could go in?
Grand Theft Auto 3 was Liberty City.
Okay, Grand Theft Auto 3 was Liberty City.
Yeah, it was like, Grand Theft Auto Vice City taking, I think it was like a mock-up of Miami.
Right.
And then Grand Theft Auto 4 had you coming back to Vice.
Yeah, because
Liberty City as well.
Yeah, I got a little confused there because they were all released right around the same time. So, yeah, I know Grand Theft Auto 3 was 2001, and then 2002 was Vice City. So, what do you think?
It was a pretty quick turnaround.
Yeah, what do you think the appeal was that made it so huge?
Like I was saying, the world was your oyster. Like, you could do whatever you wanted to. I mean, the game didn't hold your hand, didn't really kind of push you to a particular direction. You could go at your own pace.
Yeah.
You could do whatever you wanted. But, I mean, for me, what always drew me in was the character and the stories, because I'm a sucker for games with good narratives, and the writing in all these, especially since Grand Theft Auto 3, the writing and the characters were like top notch at the time.
Yeah, well, let's talk about some of the details. So obviously, everyone knows. Let's go from the beginning. So everyone knows what Grand Theft Auto. The details are, people thought it was funny where you could run people over, and I think that's what part of it was too. It's like, oh my God, these guys from DMA Design, like, it was innovative at the time. It was formerly DMA Design, but it's Rockstar. But
Rockstar,
yeah, it was innovative at the time. It's like, oh my God, I remember sitting in school and like my mom would And out when I got out of school, my mom would be like, "Oh no, we're not playing GTA. Don't not playing it." And then of course, when I would hang out, stay the night at my friend's house, like everyone does, that's what we'd be
Yep.
playing. That and Mortal Kombat, rated G games.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
were the
Nice
games.
wholesome family games.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah. So I have a good time, good memories, and so you think the gameplay was that one of the first like original kind of like carjacking games, like role playing, right? It was all of it in one. You had racing, there was some role playing involved too, right? Like you were saying with some of the characters coming on.
Yeah. Like in terms of traditional like role playing games, like you're not upgrading your skills or
Right.
stats. You're obviously, kind of chasing money, so to speak. So the more missions you did, the more money you got, and then you could go out and you could buy weapons, you could buy cars, you could buy upgrades to your cars as well. But and yeah, the appeal, like for just further going into the game, was obviously causing chaos. Like throughout the entire games, you're not a good guy. You really aren't.
Right.
You are the bad guy, and you are causing havoc as much as possible with good intentions. Because,
Well, of course.
it's kind of like you're rooting for the bad guy in this sense because it's usually a redemption story. Like it's a revenge story. They want to go after someone who wronged them, and they may not be going about it the right way, but you're still rooting for them in the end.
Sure. Now, what's your personal favorite? Do you remember the ones where they were set in the 60s? I know it was after the original. In 99, there was actually some that came out. It was London, and then obviously Grand Theft Auto 2. Do you remember those games? Were you a big PS1 guy? If not, what's your favorite?
Uh, I didn't get into the London ones actually. I didn't find out they made sequels to those like Grand Theft Auto London until like years ago. So I totally missed out on that. But my favorite obviously has to be. I had a soft spot for Grand Theft Auto 4 because Grand Theft Auto 4 starred a character called Niko Bellic, and it's not indicated in the game, but it's indicated that he is of Balkan descent, and I am from my family is from the Balkans, from Eastern Europe.
Oh, really?
So I identify with the character because he talks about like he's moving to Liberty City to escape a war, and
Oh my
I think
God.
the developers of Rockstar actually came out and said that they designed the character Nico after one of their drivers who was Serbian,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, oh, that's kind of a funny thing.
Yeah.
So he had a whole fleshed out backstory about how he committed war crimes, his native country. Obviously, they avoided saying names, but if you were reading between the lines, you could put two and two together. But so
Yeah.
I had a soft spot for that one.
Yeah.
And him and the story of him and his cousin Roman. I just love that dynamic.
Right.
But I really like the way Grand Theft Auto 5 did the whole, like, you could play as three characters at the same time. Franklin, Trevor, and Michael. I mean, and, like, three
Yeah.
characters that are total opposites of each other,
Well,
but have to work together.
I was looking at the sales. Why do you think there was such a spike from 4 to 5? I see $100 million. Why was there such a spike?
Yeah,
Was it nostalgia from all the millennials? Or
Well, there's a fan favorite, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas was kind of like a really good fan favorite. Like, a lot of people really liked that series. So when Grand Theft Auto 5 announced that they were going to be returning back to San Andreas, like, city universe,
yeah,
like, that got a lot of people in.
yeah, that's a huge
Just
spike.
it definitely is. I think, graphically, story-wise, characters, I think they really doubled down with Grand Theft Auto 5 in their development. I mean, they took almost like 5-6 years to develop it. So,
Right.
so I think just the what their visions were pretty
Mhm.
daunting when you think about it.
Yeah. So, which location is your like favorite? I know we were talking about San Andreas, but as far as the locations, which one was your favorite? Like, besides of the game, I'm talking about like graphically speaking on Vice City, San Andreas, or Liberty City. Graphically, which one do you think was the best one?
I think Vice City at the time had a very unique art style, because it was taking place in the 80s,
Sure.
and it really made the 80s pop. Like, and that was, I mean, I was an 80s kid. I was too young to remember all the fashion and all the music and everything like
Yeah.
that. But I mean, I remember the music, obviously, you know, like putting out hits like Michael Jackson and Toto and all that stuff. But so Vice City, I think, had the most unique art style graphically and just in the cars and the dress and everything like that. But obviously, Grand Theft Auto 5 has obviously takes the cake for the best graphics.
Well, sure, obviously, because you know it's the most recent. I mean, graphics have grown exponentially since then. Sure. I mean, and what's astonishing, I got a little facts here. The power of Wikipedia, but I got some facts here. Like, it's astonishing the amount of greatest hits on these things. Like the PS1, like the original PlayStation 1 greatest hit. 3 PlayStation 2 greatest. I mean, the list goes on. I didn't realize that these were on the greatest hits list. Obviously, most of them are PlayStation, but they were hitting the Xbox 360 platinum list too. I didn't realize there were such. I knew they had like a cult following, but I didn't realize like logistically they were one of the best too. Like, I thought they were more like an Adam Sandler film, where Adam Sandler, everyone likes Adam Sandler, but if you rate Adam Sandler's movies, they're eh. But Adam Sandler is a legend. But I thought that Grand Theft Auto was something like that, where it was, they're amazing games, but no, they're legit, huh?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, they are. I mean, when you think Grand Theft Auto 5 is the third best-selling video game of all time.
Yeah, that's nuts. Time.
I think Tetris holds that number one spot.
But, I mean, it's Tetris. Like, everyone loves Tetris. I mean,
yeah, exactly. And then also too, everybody loves Grand Theft Auto because when you think about it, I mean, you're living a fantasy life.
Right.
You can do whatever you want. It glorifies violence, which I'm not going to go down the whole video game violence debate. But it glorifies violence and it gives you the freedom to do.
Stoy, if we did that, we'd be here all night, buddy.
yes, we would. Yes, we would. So we'll just leave it at that. But I mean, it shocks people, and that's what's so addicting about it for people. If you need a car, you just jump out in the middle of the street and you steal someone's car.
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing.
Yeah,
and
if you need guns, you just walk into a gun store, buy some guns, buy some ammunition. Well, and the more recent one, you can buy clothes now and stuff.
Like, I'm so old, bro, that I remember playing the original 19. Let's go back to the original. I remember the one that came out in '97. I was 10. I mean, that was it. It was on DOS. It was like you had your old school your old school desktop. It did the dial up. It did the dial up sound that everyone hates. And then the first thing I would click would be Grand Theft Auto. That was it, And the fact that after all these years that it's still huge. It's still huge. I think and of course, with the success of 5, I heard I don't know, maybe you know a little more than I do about this, but have you ever heard of the YouTube channel The Know? You ever heard of them?
I've heard of it, yeah.
Yeah, they were the ones that, I guess there was a rumor that just came out that said there's a sequel for 21 or 22 to go to number 6. Is that true or false, or what's your hearsay on it?
I think I want to say yes. Obviously, I haven't heard anything substantial. And it's a long time, actually. Like, we're going on 7 years since Grand Theft Auto 5 came out, so you're wondering, like, hey, what have you guys been doing? But they're still pumping out content for Grand Theft Auto 5.
Yeah.
They are still making tons of money on a game that is 7 years old, which is still amazing. So for them, you have a financial interest to pump out a game as soon as you can.
Yeah.
A sequel.
But here's the thing. Not trying to cut you off. I'm sorry, but here's the thing that people don't understand. There was a 7-year layoff between 3 and 4. So it's like people are being a little hypocritical if they're like, oh, well, where is it at? It's like, you waited 7 years from 3 to 4.
Yeah. I mean, you had other games in between. You had the Nintendo DS games. You had games on the PSP as well that were little short stories, small stories. But and then I think Grand Theft Auto 4 had a few DLC as well. But they were short little snippets that they still got your money for. But it's a long time between full-fledged games that we're sitting here waiting. And so and also too, Rockstar, they also developed the game series Red Dead Redemption. Yeah. And they just put out Red Dead Redemption 2 like 2 years ago now. So that was something people were clamoring for years.
Yeah. And what's interesting about the Grand Theft Auto stories is that there are some legit film and music icons that use their voices. I mean, Samuel L. Jackson, his I heard his voice was in, didn't he? What was he on for? Which one was he on? Do you
He was
remember?
on San Andreas. He played a dirty cop.
Yeah. Okay. Do you know any background
Yeah.
on his character other than that, or was it a prominent character, or was it just a side character?
He was kind of a side character because I can't remember the guy's name at the time. The guy that the main character in San Andreas, but obviously he was getting in trouble with the law. And,
Oh well, yeah.
Samuel Jackson. Yeah, go figure.
Yeah.
And Samuel Jackson's character was kind of like keeping an eye on him, like, hey, do what I ask, and I'll look past all your crimes. So to
Sure.
speak, and I'll help you, kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, they had like I think especially like the music honestly was so iconic in the series. Like,
Well,
the way
yeah.
they picked the radio stations.
Axl Rose.
Yeah, he had his own channel. I think in one of them as well. There were a couple. I think Van Halen even did the voice. Sammy Hagar, I think, did one of the voices. I want to say.
Why do you think big names? You think it was Rockstar putting the money out? I mean, I hate to say it, or do you think the cult of the series got to the? You think it was a mixture of both, as in the legacy of the series and money, or do you think they did it for? Let's be honest, the money. Like, I don't know the budget of Rockstar, but you know.
Well, the gaming budgets nowadays are within the millions now. So
Right.
especially a developer like Rockstar who makes money just sitting on Grand Theft Auto 5 right now.
Well, sure.
They have the money to blow. But I just think the cult
Well,
following.
yeah.
I mean, when everyone thinks video games, you're either thinking Super Mario Brothers, Tetris, and Grand Theft Auto.
I would
It's
put
such an
I would
iconic
put
game.
I would put Mortal Kombat in there, especially
Yeah.
but that's just me. But
Yeah, no, yeah, I would too actually because Mortal Kombat when that came out hit the ground and it was shocking. It
dude,
was
I
just
used to
like
have.
Grand
We
Theft
can
Auto.
talk about Mortal Kombat if we wanted to. I used to have.
Oh yeah,
Sleepovers where all we would do was play Mortal Kombat. But let's stick
yeah.
on Grand Theft Auto for a while. Um, so what do you think is like if there is a next one? What do you think they'll do? Like, do you think where do they go from here? Have they kept? Is there anything else you think they can explore? Maybe a new location. What's your thoughts on that? Like, do you know any details? Maybe.
I don't know any details. The only thing that I heard would be that it would be kind of taking place in a time period. Like one of the reasons why Grand Theft Auto, Vice City, and San Andreas were so well put together was they were taking place during historical time periods. Obviously, Vice City was taking place in the 80s. San Andreas was taking place in the 90s. I would like to see them kind of explore something similar. Maybe go back to the 70s,
Right.
even maybe the 60s.
Well, they already did this.
I think,
That's what the London games were in the '60s.
yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
So
So yeah, maybe go back into the 70s during the days of disco and post-war
yeah,
Vietnam,
yeah,
stuff and everything.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
I think that would be interesting ground. I mean, or they could, I would say they could go modern like they did with Grand Theft Auto 5, but I don't think it would be their best interest to just repeat what they just did.
Or you
I
know
mean,
what
I
they
really
could
think if you're
do?
gonna go,
You know what they could do? They could explore the flying car thing in the next 30 years. I'm just kidding. Hit each other with flying
actually,
cars.
yeah,
You know. But
actually that would be kind of interesting.
no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. So let's transition to your podcast. So tell me the history of EXPCast and give me the origin. How did it start?
Yeah, we started, like I said, my friend Dan and I kind of started it about 3-4 years ago, and it was just him and I. We, put like a microphone in the middle of a table and just started talking video games. What games have we been playing, what we're excited for coming up soon, and then we just talk about like kind of like topics revolving around video games, like what are some of our favorite heroes, what are some of our favorite RPG games, or what makes certain characters stand out over others. And we frame like topics around it. um we try to we keep it very light, like it's not like a news podcast. We try to frame it as like a bunch of friends just hanging out at a table talking about video games.
Right.
So now we've since progressed to having 4 guys. There's 4 of us now. There's actual like good production. Everybody has their own microphone and everything.
Really?
Yeah.
Is there
went from one microphone to 4.
How's your well, where are you guys from again? Where are you guys from?
We're from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're fortunate that
Packer fans?
everybody's in the
Are
same
you
room.
guys Packer fans, Brewers fans? No sports at all?
Yeah. Yeah, we are. I mean, I think I'm more of the Packer fan than everybody else.
Yeah.
But I mean, they may disagree with me. But
well, back to your history. So, how's the reception? Like, does your audience like fluctuate, or what? Tell me the demographics of your audience. Are they all hardcore gamers? Or
yeah, we tried because our podcast can be kind of long, so I think in that sense we do appeal to those kind of like hardcore gamers because our topics are very much like framing the games we're currently playing, so it's very much in the now, as opposed to because there have been times that people will come up to me and they say, well, I'd listen to your podcast, but I haven't played video games in years, or the last time I played a video game was Mortal Kombat for the Sega Genesis or something like that, whatever. So it's like then we do alienate then those people because maybe they like video games but they're not up on current events.
Yeah. So I'm not like super into video games. I don't have a system. I'm just talking about, I'm one of those old people, not old people, but millennials that says, oh, like I was saying with Grand Theft Auto, oh, back in my day, But I used to have I think I stopped at the PS2. I just, outdated, but I'm outdated, but what's your thoughts on this whole movement to go back to the arcade style games, to go back, people, now that's probably people trying to remember when they were young, right? It's a bunch of millennials saying, oh, I want to go back to the arcade style games, right?
Yeah.
That's what it is.
There's a trend now where developers are starting to take some of their old games and remaking them. Remember playing Resident Evil 2?
Yeah, I think I played it a couple times, but I'm familiar with the games. Yeah, the game, yes.
Yeah, so they remade it last year, which was, I mean, it came out amazing. Complete reimagining of the original game. It still maintained a lot of what made Resident Evil 2 the original so good, and then just like modernized it.
I'm more of a sports game guys, but my friends kind of pulled me into the Call of Duty, the Halo, all that. So that's more my speed on that. But I mean, and of course sports games. But what's your favorite genre? The cover, and then what's your favorite genre overall? Is it the GTA style game?
I do have a soft spot for GTA style games because those are like. We define those as like open world role playing games,
right? RPGs, yeah.
Because, like you're not necessarily. It's not an RPG in a traditional sense where you're upgrading your stats. Upgrading your health and everything like that.
I've never been a huge RPG guy. So, Stoy, why should I? I'm gonna put you on the spot. Why should I give RPG games a shot?
It's if you're the type of person that likes to micromanage. And adjust your character the way you want to see them fit. Whether it's obviously, there's RPGs out there that, you could play as males, you could play as females, you could play as completely different made up races, which is amazing. And, you really control the destiny of your hero. You can obviously upgrade the stats. You want them to be more of a magician. You want them to be more of a warrior. You want them to be more of a fighter. So, it's really, you're playing the story, but, you are the character. You take ownership of that character.
Do you remember the old, tell me if I'm being off on this correlation, but do you remember, this is going to be really weird, but do you remember the old Pokemon fad? Pokemon?
It's still a fad.
It still is a fad? So, is that like the original, I feel like when you had the Pokemon cards and you could make, you make yourself stronger or put the cards on top of there. Is that the original RPG? Now it's where you can create your different worlds, right? With RPG, get your own clans and stuff like Fortnite, stuff like that.
Well, the big thing was Pokemon Go that came out a few years ago.
Yeah, Pokemon
People
Go.
Are playing that on their cell phones.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
they just released a mainline Pokemon for the Nintendo Switch just last year, which kind of, divided fans a little bit because you had a lot of these old school fans that wanted to play with Pokemon from years ago.
Right, that was me. I remember in 7th grade,
yeah.
my mom had a Christmas from hell because she spent so much money on my. I still feel bad to this day. She spent so much money on my Pokemon cards, and for like a 2 or 3 year fad, still feel terrible about that because that's what it was back then. You always had to get you had to get the next pack. Charizard, whatever you had, and then the problem I thought with Pokemon Go is that, well, it's a hazard. It's a hazard, with GPSs, and people, and of course people, unfortunately being stupid with it, But
we had this thing in Milwaukee. I don't know if you heard a few years ago, like Milwaukee Parks actually sent out a notice banning people coming into the parks playing Pokemon Go, like literally banning them.
Really?
And because what people would do is they would come to the parks, and they'd play Pokemon Go on their phones, and then they would just leave garbage and just crap all over the place.
Right.
They were kind of disrespecting the park, which I understand, but you're gonna tell people not to visit your parks to play a game? Come
on. Right. So, what's your thought on the Fortnite craze? Like all the dances and stuff. Do you think that's like a long-term franchise, or do you think it's I would hate to say one-hit wonder, but do you see it being like a GTA where it just goes on for decades, or do you see it like flaming out?
It's made its mark. It's made its impact. There's been a lot of copycats that have come out recently, and they've kind of fizzled. They've kind of fizzled and died. A lot of them.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think they want to try to copy the formula, but add something different, add their own style to it. Because, Fortnite is, well, for one, it's free to play, free to jump in. It's addicting in nature, and I think that's what's drawing people in.
What I find astonishing with it is kids are playing Fortnite earlier than kids were playing Mortal Kombat. Like I've never, I'm in the school system. I have a job in the school system, and kids are coming around 2nd grade, 1st grade, like doing dances, doing the floss, doing all the Fortnite dances. And I'm like, what is this first graders playing Fortnite? Now, why do you think that is?
Yeah.
Do you think is it, first of all, is it universal? Is it supposed to be played that young? Or is it just kids doing what we all did, play games behind parents' back? Or
I think nowadays there's so much good education for parents, to know what their kids are playing.
I mean, obviously, now let me rehash my statement there. I hope I didn't offend anybody. You know what I'm trying to say. I mean, back in the day, people would play games and everything, and their parents would have a hard time. The way I worded it was a little rough, but you get my point.
No, it's fine. I do get your point because, I was trying to hide the fact that I was playing Mortal Kombat from my parents when I was a kid.
Well, I mean, who didn't?
It was a very hard thing to do. But
who didn't? And the same thing we can do the same thing with TV. There's TV shows Simpsons. I mean, I can go on. That's been going on since the probably 20s and 30s, 40s. Since early 1900s, there were games and TV shows. I mean, how many people were wanting people to watch? The old westerns back in the day. With guns and everything, and kids were watching those. So
I want to say in the 70s there was substantial news coming out that pinball machines, were causing kids to act violently because they would congregate in arcades and bars and stuff like that to play pinball, and it's like, these gangs of kids are getting together causing havoc.
Trust me, I just did a podcast about society being soft, so I don't need to.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah, I don't need to rehash my thoughts on it.
Yeah,
but
I'm with you on that because I think we kind of live in that outrage culture of Fortnite is pale in comparison to what Mortal Kombat was. Even when Grand Theft Auto 3 came out, you remember, it was on the news everywhere.
I do.
And all people were talking about was you can beat up hookers after you have your way with them and then take their money.
So
so that was making. I mean, there'll always be something.
Yeah. And I think the problem is the society's always trying to balance out. If something happens in the news, then society in general wants to balance it the other way using movies, TVs. I feel like entertainment gets used as a balancing to what happens in the real world. Does that make
Mhm.
sense? So if
Oh
something
yeah, it
happens, if
does
some
because
fad
right
or
now video
some
games are the biggest entertainment medium.
right, so I feel like that, and people don't think about it that way. They don't. They think that society's getting soft, which it is, but there's
Mhm.
reasons for that because violence is so prevalent nowadays. In the world. So
Mhm.
people want to be a little softer on entertainment because the world is so crazy. You know.
Well, you also have my take on it, where um, parents expect their kids to be educated by mediums like entertainment.
Right.
So they put their kids in front of a TV, they don't want their kids to play violent games or something like that, because then parents have to do their due diligence afterwards to say, hey, let's talk about this game that you're playing and how it's not a good idea to run around shooting people, in real
Right.
life. Um, so long as you instill good values in your kids, you shouldn't have to worry about it. But parents shouldn't expect video games, TV shows, movies, music to educate their kids.
Mm-hmm.
They're just entertainment. That's it.
So, what do you see the future being for like first person shooters then, or shooting games in general? Do you see them like never going away? Because I remember, COD, obviously everyone knows Call of Duty, Halo. I used to play a game back in the day called Team Fortress Classic, which was
Yep.
a copy of Counter Strike. So
Yeah, and it's still that's still being played to this day. Counter Strike is still
dude,
big.
Stoy,
Team
TFC
Fortress 2
2
now.
was my jam, man. I
Yeah,
I oh my god, man! I'm glad I can actually talk video games on the podcast now. But like, I used to no, I used to play. I used to spend like how people spend like all day playing games, always, forever. But I
yeah,
used to
yep.
spend 3 days straight playing TFC, straight
Hmm. Wow.
doing the scout, doing the heavy weapons guy. And
Hmm.
if a game like that came out now, I think people would scream and moan and groan. A game like that. I mean, there was blood and guts.
Yeah, and games nowadays are getting so realistic. So hyper realistic now that it's starting to show more of that that visceral stuff,
Right.
which I think nowadays it'd have to be pretty significant in order to make news, because you still have a lot of horror games that are coming out there that are pretty grotesque and violent and stuff. Um, but yeah, the graphics are only getting better. Only getting more realistic as we go on.
All right. So, what's your favorite game of all time? I know it's a heavy hitting question, and you could go anywhere with this. So, what's your favorite? It could be a favorite game. It could be a favorite series. I know we're talking about GTA,
Mhm.
but it could be that. It could be anything else. What's your favorite of all time?
Well, when I was high school actually, because it came out in high school. Resident Evil was my favorite series at the time when it came out for PlayStation. Resident Evil 2 is
So,
my to make a long story short, is my favorite video game of all time. And the remake came out when they announced that they were making a remake.
mhm.
I lost my mind. You are remaking one of my favorite games of all time.
Yeah, so for novices like me that only knows really the name, can you give us the background on Resident Evil? Like what was the we can
Sure.
talk about that real quick. So do you know when that was made and everything?
That was made in about 1998, I believe. I remember I was kind of like a sophomore or junior in high school at the time, and it was basically about like zombies taking over a small midwestern town called Raccoon City. It's a fictional town, obviously, but yeah, you play as two characters in the game. You play as a cop, a rookie cop who shows up on his first day and finds the whole town infected with zombies, and then you play as another girl, a drifter who travels to town searching for her brother, and they both meet each other by happenstance, and they have to get out. And obviously, as they're getting out, they're unraveling conspiracy as to what happened, who's involved with this major outbreak, and what they plan to do to kind of help stop it or help curb it somehow. But yeah, like you're talking about, like running around. There's a huge element of tension, huge element of horror. There's obviously grotesque
Right.
violence, of like you're shooting zombies' heads off, limbs off, and stuff, which is
Trust me, man. This
awesome.
you're talking to a guy who used to play Duke Nukem and stuff like that. So
Yeah. So
you know,
so you can get the appeal of that stuff, and
yeah,
at the like I said, at the time, it was like, it was one of the most scariest and most tense games to play at that time, and it still is to a lot of. I mean, obviously, the game doesn't age very well. If you were to play it
right,
now for the first time, you'd probably play it and be like, I don't understand this. So this is why I recommend playing Resident Evil 2 Remake,
yeah.
because it's modernized and it is still just as good, if not better.
I would like to talk about a series that we haven't mentioned yet. What was your thoughts on the or what was your like background on the Super Mario franchise? Did you do them all? Did you do Mario Kart, Super Mario? You played all that, I assume, right?
Yeah, the first game I ever played, well, besides Atari games, was
Yeah.
I got
Well,
lumped into
oh,
playing Super Mario
Atari.
Brothers.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, one of my friends had an Atari, and I was like, it's okay, whatever. I wasn't really into video games during that era, but then when Super Mario Brothers came out, I was like, yo, I am in. I
Yeah,
need a Nintendo now, mom.
that was my jam too,
And
and Super Mario Kart was my jam because Super Mario Kart was amazing because the detail, like I couldn't believe in a game like that. You know what I'm saying? Like in '90s,
yeah,
you could lose. They actually had detail where you could lose by a tenth of a second. Like people don't realize
yep,
how hard that was to make a game like that back then. To have a
yeah, to
setting
make
where
it,
you could lose by nowadays in games, of course, you can lose by a millisecond. But back then, having a game where you could do a close finish, that was like innovative.
yeah, yeah, that really was. And there was a game where like you could literally pit Mario, Luigi, and Bowser to kind of compete against each other, like
Right.
racing cars. Like
Rainbow,
that's
yeah, and
so awesome.
Rainbow Road, yeah. that
Rainbow Road, man.
was my
Rainbow Road,
jam,
that's
bro.
ended friendships. Yeah, that Mario Kart ended friendships, man.
Yeah, it did. The
I've
green,
seen,
yeah,
I've
the
seen it.
green,
I've seen it happen.
the green. You know what I'm saying? Shell and
Yep.
all that.
Like I said, but the blue shell was the most devastating. If if you're one of the last few people, you get that blue shell, which
Oh, we were
automatically
terrible,
targets the
man.
first
Like
place person.
we would set up tournaments, having like an 8-person tournament, and
Yep.
and I can't be the only one to ever do that. And then
No.
winners face, move forward.
Yeah. I'm actually going to a Mario Kart tournament this weekend on Saturday.
Oh yeah.
There's a local movie theater group that's hosting a Mario Kart tournament. It's a more recent one.
Oh,
Mario
that's
Kart 8 for
awesome.
the Switch. But talk about playing Mario Kart on the big screen. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
One of those things I got to give credit to the Super Mario Brothers series.
Right.
You remember Super Mario 64, right?
Of course.
Yeah, that was probably one of the most innovative video games of all time, because that took Mario from the two-dimensional plane into the three-dimensional plane, and I just remember being blown away by that jump, and it was like, it controlled so well at the time, and it was so innovative and so unique, and just like, obviously, I think it definitely altered video games to this day just because of that game.
Right. Are you you have anyone on your panel that's a big sports games guy?
Surprisingly, no, we don't.
Really?
We have a guy. We have a guy that's into role-playing games.
Oh,
like
okay.
constantly just loves to play role-playing games. We got another guy that plays kind of weird independent games.
All right. Well,
video games I've never heard
a
of.
sports games guy, you know who to go to, Stoy.
Oh yeah, because we need some of that.
You can
because,
hit me. You can hit me up, and we'll get together.
All right, yeah, for sure. Because we don't have that kind of representation. The only sports games I ever play are FIFA, because I'm a soccer guy. So.
Oh, really? I'm a soccer guy too.
Yeah. Who do you follow?
I'm Chelsea.
Do you follow any teams?
Chelsea, Premier League.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Oh, what are you, Everton or something? What are you, Everton or something?
No. I'm Liverpool. I'm okay with Chelsea.
That's funny.
Man, they got America's golden boy, Christian Pulisic.
Yeah. Oh, I could talk soccer with you for another podcast. Shit. So, what's the future of your podcast? What do you have anything you'd like to promote?
Well, you can follow us anywhere you listen to podcasts. We're pretty much in as many places as you can, and we want to branch out and do more content with others. I really want to thank you for inviting me on, to kind of not only promote video games, but to at least talk about video games with someone that's just kind of genuinely in the know. And obviously allow me to talk about what I do and stuff, but I want to talk to other content creators. I want to talk to, even video game developers. Like, I want to, do more, because the video game world is so huge. There's not only are there creators and developers, but there's tons of content creators and tons of fans out there.
There must be a huge competition. How do you distinguish yourself between others?
It's a big competition, and what I've noticed is there's a lot of people that follow the same formula of video games, but what I think sets us apart from everybody else is our banter. And I think our banter is really good. We're funny. We like to shoot jokes at each other back and forth. And also too, we're all like 4 different people. Like, we have different likes about video games. We have different things that we, enjoy about video games. So we all bring unique takes on, video games, certain video game themes or whatever. But I think once you listen to us, within the first 15 minutes, you'll know that, hey, these guys must be really good friends. And I think that's what sets us apart.
Okay, do you have any social media handles?
Yeah, we're on Instagram, obviously, Facebook, and Twitter at EXPCast. So, and then also, too, I think I have a LinkedIn page, but whatever. We post pretty regularly there. Sometimes we'll post, audio clips from episodes or just funny meme pictures or whatever, just to kind of get conversations going. We actually, one of our upcoming episodes, we want to talk about a topic of if you went to hell, what would be the one video game that you'd be playing for all eternity?
Oh,
so, which likens it to which video game do you hate the absolute most? But you have to play for all of eternity.
Oh my God!
Do you have one?
A game that I would now? What's the question again? It would be something I hate or something that I would play?
Something that you would hate. So, for example, your most hated video game of all time.
Oh.
But if you go to hell, that's what you have to play for the rest of your life.
Oh, Dragon Ball Z.
Oh God, one of my guys will probably not like to hear that.
Not a big Dragon Ball Z guy, but if I had to, so if I had to, I'd have to go. I'd have to go there. Real quick, that was my friend's really a real favorite of his. Now, do you guys? What's your guys' thoughts on remember the Dragon Ball Z and Pokemon fad? Were they rivalries or were they separate entities? Because I remember them being on TV. Entities. I remember. Oh, I know that, but I mean, did they have the same demographic?
Yeah, pretty much, because the Pokemon was an animated series at the same time.
Right. I remember watching them.
Animated series, yeah. So.
Yeah, I remember watching Pokemon with my boy Ash, and then an hour or two later, my friend would be watching this Dragon Ball Z, and I'm like, what the hell is this? He's like, oh, it's Dragon Ball Z. There's Goku. There's this. I'm like, I just never got into it. Now, what's the appeal of it? Yeah, obviously, everyone likes Goku, but
I honestly don't know, because we actually had one of our past episodes where my friend Dan, or my podcast host Dan, invited a couple friends onto the show to explain the Dragon Ball Z universe to me.
And you still don't. Wait a minute, Stoy.
Dragon Ball Z.
Stoy, wait. You had people on the podcast to talk about Dragon Ball Z, and you don't know the lore of it?
No, I don't. They came on to teach me, so they basically were like, "We got to try to get Stoy to understand the Dragon Ball Z universe." So I said, "Okay." Basically, one of those things. Okay, everybody, tell me the story. Tell me the characters. Tell me what's so special about Goku and Frieza and all these other characters and everything. And, yeah. So, like I said, I know some of the details. I'm not fully versed on the universe, but it was a very fun episode, actually.
Yeah. Well, what's your favorite episode? If you had to pick one for someone to listen to.
I don't have a favorite episode. I have a favorite movie. It was one of the movies that came out recently. It was the movie about.
No. I meant I'm sorry. I meant episode of your podcast.
Oh, that was actually a really good one. That Dragon Ball Z one was probably the most unique, because you're talking about four of the biggest Dragon Ball Z fans of all time. Like, I mean, to me, in my eyes, they're just talking passionately about something, and that's what I love that episode the most, is that when you get a group of people talking really passionate about someone or something, and that was probably our most different episode out of all the episodes that we've had. It's one of my favorite ones. That's a tough one.
How long have you guys been around?
We're almost going on our 4th year, coming up in a
Oh
couple
my
months,
God! So yeah, that's like
yeah.
picking what's your favorite child. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because we've had like over 100 episodes at this point, and it's like, man, it's a tough one. You ever do that where like you go listen to your more recent episode?
Yeah.
And then listen to your first episode?
I always tell people, well, ours are different because we didn't know, Frank and I didn't know what the fuck, excuse my language, but we didn't know what the hell we were doing. So if you look back, if you listen to some of our first episodes, we're doing a podcast out of our car. Like, it is what not to do in the podcast world is our first, I don't know, like 10 or so. And that's what kind of separated us was we liked doing it, but I like doing it as more of like passion. He was just doing it to hang out with me. You know what I'm saying? Like he was just doing it. I felt like he was doing it just so, just because I wanted him to do it. Not that he wanted to do it for himself. He wanted to, you know what I'm saying? Because he knew I liked the podcast. So he was like, all right, I'll try this podcast thing. And I think what happened was I think he just got tired of it. And
it's a lot of work.
So
it
but
really is.
The one I tell people to listen to on ours is the Stripper Comedian. That's our best one.
The Stripper Comedian? I saw that one, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that one.
I'll have to go back to that one.
Yeah, you gotta listen to it. That's the best one. It has her best downloads, and she strips on the weekdays, and she makes fun of herself on the weekends.
Oh, okay.
She's actually a national. She's actually a national act now. Like when we
really?
had her on, she was up and coming, but now she's pretty national.
Okay.
So.
That's really cool.
All right, Stoy. Well, anything else you wanna talk about tonight, or anything else on your mind?
No. We're in the middle of a transition period for video games because the next generation of systems are coming out this year.
Oh yeah.
So I have a feeling when we see Grand Theft Auto 6, it's going to blow people away.
Well, what are the next video game systems?
It's going to be PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X or something. I think that's what they're calling it.
Yeah. Now, you know what's funny is... what's funny is I'm sure it's not a coincidence that they're coming out around the same time.
Oh, yeah. I think they do that together. Nintendo is rumored to have like an upgraded version of their system coming out this year, too. So this is going to be a big year for hardware. And I think, when you see Grand Theft Auto 6 come out, it's probably going to come out for the next generation. And I think just both in terms of graphics and storytelling and everything, I think it's going to blow people away.
Well, Stoy, if you ever need a sports guy, you know who to go to.
No, dude, I'm serious. We need to get your intakes, your takes on some of the sports games because it's something we're sorely lacking.
All right, well, you got my Skype, you got everything. Just hit me up.
I will for sure, man.
All right, man. Thanks
for having me, dude. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
No problem. Thank you.
All right, take care, Stoy.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Sensibly Cynical. I want to thank Stoy from EXPCast for coming on the podcast today. It was really awesome to talk to somebody who really knows the video game business and to talk about the legacy of Grand Theft Auto. I think his podcast, him and his crew do a great job over there, and everybody should check them out. If you could please subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes, it'd be highly appreciated. Also, check us out on Twitter at Cynical Sensibly, Instagram Sensibly Cynical Pod, and you can check out our Facebook group. Once again, thank you for listening. Take care.